It's a pleasure being here today. Thank you very much for your time and attention. Thank you very much, dear panelists, for your time as well. And with no further hesitations, let's jump straight into the first questions for the discussions. So looking at about the challenges and the opportunities that we are facing and we can leverage to actually increase the charging infrastructure in Middle East. So maybe I'll start just going in order. If Mr. Shuo, you would like to start presenting what, in your views, are the main challenges and opportunities that lies ahead.
Sure, thanks for that. So, hi everybody, I'm Xian. I work for TotalEnergies, and TotalEnergies, we are now a multi-energy company. Globally, we operate over 60,000 charging points. In the region that I take care of, in the Asia and Middle East region, we have coming over 5,000 charge points. And Middle East is a market that has been always close to our heart, something that we've been hoping to invest more in. As we have been analyzing, as we've been speaking to partners in the industry, regulations and the landscape that encourages investment has been an area that we've been constantly monitoring. So I think earlier the MOEI also spoke about it, where there's clearer regulations and clearer tariff policies that would then allow and invite more of such investments from us.
Yeah. So regulation, regulatory certainty, that's challenge ahead that we have heard there are plans to be tackled. What about from a EVIQ perspective, Mr. Ulf, what do you see being the biggest challenge or opportunities ahead of you?
Yeah, for us, as having the mandate to roll out a public accessible fast charging network in the kingdom, fully fledged cities, but also along the motorways, just started. We need to build up the ecosystem, and we heard about the ecosystem a lot today, more or less from scratch. So we need hardware providers, charging hardware, which are reliable. We need installation partners. We need companies to do the engineering, software, the CPMS, but also developing our own app, EV driver app, putting the EV driver into the focus. So for us as EVIQ, it is the challenge to build up this partner network in a decent manner that we then can start rolling out our infrastructure. And it's really a partner play. It is also securing the sites, which is vital for us to start rolling out. And frankly, it's really the multitude of disciplines we're currently dealing with. So a lot of balls in the air that we need to juggle in order to ramp up the rollout of the infrastructure.
Excellent. So we'll get back to the partnership concept or the support of many different ecosystem players to actually deploy a challenging EV infrastructure. But let me hear from Mr. Badr before.
Yeah, so basically today the challenges comes from the infrastructure and the readiness of the legislations and the regulations that support having such kind of infrastructure and the availability of the places, which thankfully, most of the developers or the big developers today in the market, in the real estate market, they started to notice the need of the smart mobility and the electrical mobility and the future mobility, let's call it, and its availability within the infrastructure from day zero before starting the groundbreaking even, while master planning and putting the right plans in place.
Excellent. And I know that you are doing quite a lot already in that domain, and you are leading the way in making sure that your real estate is already EV charging ready, if I'm
Yeah, so thankfully we were the first project in KSA as a residential project, introduced the electrical vehicle chargers with the house itself. While selling the house, it was sold with an electrical charger at the beginning. So back in 2022, when we started.
Amazing. And I understood also reading up a little bit that this is aligned with the ROSHN community philosophy of quietness, of respect to the environment.
Exactly.
So it's an opportunity for you to further consolidate your reputations and your brand in terms of awareness to the customers.
Plus, it will help that even when the customers make the decision of buying an electrical vehicle, either if the electrical charger is not there, we are making sure that we have the infrastructure for it is ready there. It's just a plug and play, not like the current existing houses or the current existing infrastructure, which is there are some changes required into the residential community to have these electrical chargers.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Dr. Rami.
Good afternoon, everyone. I couldn't agree more with what Badr said. I'm coming from the background of the consumer perspective and the operator perspective. When we started looking into the equation and decided to expand into the mobility business, one of the key challenges nowadays that we are having is the lack of infrastructure. A lot of challenges. It has always been the debate whether the chicken before the egg or the egg before the chicken. People will not start adapting sustainable mobility or electric vehicles until they feel comfortable about the sufficient number of charging stations. And that's the same thing we have been hearing with our partners and clients. For example, I'll take the example of the real estate developers like ROSHN. Okay, how would they promote to be a sustainable community without the efficient and reliable infrastructure? So now if we are going, let's assume a user and he decided to purchase an EV car. The question is, would it be as convenient as deciding to purchase an ICE vehicle? Here in our region, it's not that convenient so far. Why? Because the very first question the consumers are asking themselves, where are we going to charge the vehicle, how long it will take, and all of these things. So when we decided to step into the market, we saw there is a challenge. From an operator and consumer perspective, we want to sort it out and provide this convenience of service. However, in order to do this, it comes with its own challenges. Like we discussed a couple of days ago, one of the main key challenges is the heavy investments and burden for the infrastructure. And the other one, which is the common thing, the range anxiety for the individuals. In order, like I was having a discussion with one of our colleagues into the same ecosystem. He was driving from Dubai to Abu Dhabi, and then he called me, Rami, I just decided to try an electric vehicle where I'm going to charge. I needed to plan accordingly. However, when he used to drive an ICE vehicle, he just get into the car and decided to drive all the way. That's why by having a lot of CPOs like Mr. Ulf, EVIQ, and ourselves and different CPOs in the region coming into the market, the whole ecosystem would step up. There will be a lot of convenience for the end users to start using an electric vehicle or a sustainable solution. That's how we see it from the challenges perspective and the supply.
Well, thank you very much. And you're touching a point that is very sticky points. We are all looking at deploying infrastructure. So we are looking at the supply, but obviously demand. So what are the consumers still looking for? They want the supply. At the same time, we need to make sure that they are convinced to buy into the EV mobility. So any comments on where do you see the demand going? Is the demand pushing? So is there demand? What are the topics, the criticalities that consumers are still evaluating when transitioning from an ICE into an electric vehicle?
That's a very interesting point. If we will take a look and a snapshot about the data insights that's happening, we see that the adoption of electric vehicles all over the world is growing, and it's growing exponentially. So there is a demand, and it's growing up fast. But yet the thing is that, let's take our region here as an example. Countries like Saudi and the UAE, they are investing heavily into the infrastructure. Why? At the end of the day, it's a business model. It's becoming a necessity with a lot of announcement about UAE green initiatives, Saudi green initiatives, 2030, and so on. There is a demand, yes, there is a demand. But in order to convince the user and increase the ramping up, we need to provide a convenience of service. Let's look on the other side for the ICE. We no longer need to promote ICE vehicles because by default it's becoming a necessity to have a car and drive, because there is a lot of petrol station everywhere, and it has been the case for over the past 50 years. Now, what is happening? The very first question, if we are taking the Middle East as an example, okay, compared to Europe and North America, in our region here, the evolve of the ecosystem, it's in early stages. Yet there is a lot of government incentives, a lot of tax-free, a lot of heavy investment going into the infrastructure. Once we start tackling the range anxiety, and why I'm very focused on the range anxiety, because we are an operator, we touch the pain points of the users, automatically we will no longer need to promote the electric vehicles, taking into consideration that we start providing like-to-like models when it comes to the commercial side as well, so that you can convince those who are driving a budget vehicles to swap to a budget electric vehicles.
Thank you. I'll come back. You mentioned models, availability of models. I'll get back to you. Mr. Badr, you want to add challenges from
in addition to the point was mentioned by Dr. Rami here, that when the government put an incentive, some of the incentives that being put currently that the government is investing on, when you register a vehicle, for example, if you're registering an electrical vehicle, you get a good incentive to register an electric vehicle. While if you're registering an 8-cylinder, you'll be paying more on the top of the registration, like as a premium amount, a small premium amount to be paid, and yet that amount to be escalated upon the time. That's an incentive to the people to switch to the EVs, but with the time range, not on like an immediate spot decision.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think what is very important, and we've seen this also in the European market where I'm coming from, users have to try. They have to really experience this new technology, because we are talking about a different system. And what I actually don't like, and of course users are doing it, we always compare the ICE with the EV and we think only the charging is different. But it's a complete different system. You don't fuel up your vehicle like 100% full. You charge for range. So there's a lot of things that you need to be aware of, that you need to educate the consumers, that we're talking about a new technology, a different technology, and more or less forget about the past. And they need to try. And we know that range anxiety is always a big topic. We had a questionnaire sent out to users. The availability of infrastructure was #1 concern. And for us, it's not the question chicken or egg. We know that we need to build the infrastructure ahead of the market, ahead of the demand, so that people see infrastructure, can actually try going electric. And my experience shows me that whoever went electric never wants to go back to ICE vehicles, but people need to experience this. And we have to incorporate also a lot of educational measures into the things that we are doing. So it's not enough to show a nice charging station. People need to have a seamless user experience, and in the past it was always about technology, and we hoped that the chargers would work, and here we're talking about high temperatures and will it work? It will work, but it's more important to put the focus, the EV driver in the focus, that when you arrive at the charging infrastructure, you know what you're doing, it's easy to use, you have a nice app where you can navigate. So this customer focus is vital to make the change. And of course, we need to have good EVs in the market. And there's a big push, of course, from China on good vehicles, I would say, for a decent price. Of course, Saudi will have their own brand for electric vehicles, Seer, who will launch the product in 2026. Seer, of course, is also part of the Saudi ecosystem. So we need to have, the drivers need to have a choice to actually also buy the vehicles they want. So it's really about availability of vehicles in the market, and we know there's still delivery times but it's really putting the EV driver in the focus.
So if I heard you correctly, it's really moving a little bit beyond the usual discussion on infrastructure availability, range anxiety. It's about changing the mindset of the people. I read not long time ago a survey that was indeed pointing out that the normal consumer would actually size the car requirement for cases that normally never happens in the lifetime he drives the vehicle. A trip that he wants to do in a very far and remote place, and say, how would they do? And then statistically, they will never do that.
Cars are always too big. I mean, also from my European perspective, you buy a big car because you want to go skiing once a year and you want to go to the sea once a year. And the rest of the year, the car's too big.
Exactly. The sizing is basically to max capacity rather than for average use. And that is something that we really need to help consumers understand more and drive into the change. And then there is model availability. Of course, we are seeing an increased number of those, giving convenience of budgets, of styles. That's something, a car remains something that for a lot of people is a purchase of, let's say, in a 6-7 years, and everyone wants to pick the one that pleases the most his taste. So we need to cater to that emotional component as well. Please.
Maybe I just add to what was been shared. I think one area that is constant, right, across the panelists, everyone speaks about the user's experience, whether it's convenient. And coming from a global fuel retailer's point of view, when we see EV charging, it's like us bringing the fuel to the house. It cannot get more convenient than that, right? So with EV charging, you can have access to charging at home. That's the most convenient you can ever get. Your car is being topped up as you sleep. Then the question is, when you're out of home, what user experience does an EV driver look for, given the technological limitations? And how then, as a private charge point operator, we can recreate a holistic experience for them, not using the fuel retailer mindset, but as an EV charging or EV station mindset. So I think that's how we are starting to see as a fuel retailer, that how can we constantly evolve the out-of-home charging experience for our drivers? What facilities do we have to offer while they're waiting for their charge? Does it have to be more fragmented, means many stations in shopping centers, or do we continue to build standalone charging hubs that will give users the convenience?
Yeah. No, thank you very much. And I think I'll use this as a transitioning. You are mentioning about accessibility to commercial areas. We have heard in the previous questions that we are looking at an ecosystem that needs to change, needs to be established by Mr. Ulf. So maybe let's talk about the experiences that you had in creating partnership. What are the required partnership to be put in place? What are your priorities currently in this domain?
So in the Middle East, for us, especially in the UAE, I think we've started to see that, especially in Dubai, the DC network is fairly healthy, right? The number of charging points to the number of cars. What we've also realized is that the experience is not perfect. So the charging points are hard to find. Each location has probably a maximum of 3 to 4 DC charging points. And I think that's an area where we're starting to think about how we as a charge point operator could contribute to the ecosystem, supplementing the charging experience with not just charging, but what else we could possibly offer beyond charging. You know, as an EV driver, when I go to a location, I have half an hour to spare, right, no matter how fast the charging is. What else can we offer? And I think that's elements that we'll be more than happy to work with property developers or landowners today to co-create to see what's possible.
Thank you. Mr. Wolf, in your experience in setting up from scratch the ecosystem for the charging infrastructure in Saudi, lesson learned on partnership, what is required?
Yeah, I mean, we have the right colleague sitting next to me, ROSHN. Yeah. So, of course, location is key. We cannot roll a network if we don't have good locations, and we're not targeting, let's say, only locations where we apply 400 kilowatts. So let's say the big machines for going long distance. We're also targeting residential areas. We're targeting shopping malls. And I believe, and we've seen that everywhere in the world, it will always be a mix. Because it's not a fuel pump. As long as you stay in a shopping mall, you want to actually maximize, of course, the energy you take, but also maximize the capacity you want to distribute. So this is why you need different types of chargers and different power levels. So for us, the location partners are really one of the key assets we will have, and that are the ROSHNs, the real estate developers, but also the old school fuel stations, where we will also be, especially on the motorways. So that's really one part. And this is the ecosystem we are building up at the moment. And we have signed some good MOUs, but MOUs are MOUs. So now it's getting down to terms with location contracts. And we can announce also that we made good progress there. So now it's really about the rollout. And for me, as an operations guy, the end of the chain is the most important. So it's operations. So how can we make sure that the chargers run in an efficient way, that our suppliers have the right after-sales services, the right field services in the field in order to maintain the chargers and in order to guarantee maximum uptime, 99.5%, because what cannot happen is that the customers cannot charge. So we need to make sure that everything runs smoothly, and I see this operating a big network, that's the art in a cost-efficient manner.
Thank you. Mr. Badr, if you want to stress upon the partnership.
In addition to what mentioned by Ulf just now, which is the first thing we did when we started at the beginning, that when we heard, or when PIF, the mother company, started the EVIQ, we decided to do an MOU, and then we identified there is a partnering team to identify the locations, the right locations of the chargers, the type of chargers, the convenient chargers that does not violate the regulation of power use at the same time, and does not make a bad user experience in terms of too much damaging, or requires changing a lot, or it uses excess power or whatever. So that's why when you have the right key players in place and sitting in a right agreement in place and identifying from the early stages of most of the projects where are the right locations to have such kind of stations, and what are the type of chargers need to be used, and what is the most convenient for the user experience by the end of the day, that does not cause an additional pain on the customer, but it releases a bigger pain on the customers.
Yep, no, very clear. And if I understand that there is also then value in establishing partnership with companies that can provide data on usages. So where should we locate the EV charging infrastructure, either because there is an attraction that can provide a sense to go there, or because we see pattern of traffic where it is required. So a lot to be exploited, maybe again with a list of data owners in the kingdom and in the countries where we deploy.
Yeah.
Doctor, there is no doubt that two of the main challenges into the ecosystem of charging infrastructure is the heavy investments that's required and the upfront investments, which is accordingly impacting the ROI, the EPIT, and a lot of financial KPIs. And the second one is the range anxiety. In order to solve the second one with the range anxiety, we need to pour a lot amount of investment. So the question is that when we start exploring how we sort it out. To sort it out, we will need private-public partnerships. Let me give you like a very good use case. I'm coming from a telco background. Let's look at the telco industry like in the early 1990s, okay? Here in our region, majority of the telco operators are semi-government companies, or it's a JV between the public and the private sector. When they merged together and they launched some of the telco operators, and the telco operators It's very similar to the EV charging infrastructure because it requires to pour a lot amount of investments and you're required to provide coverage, cellular coverage for the end users. How was the able to cope up with the existing challenges? Once the private sector and the governmental sector merged together and they have the triple Ps and a lot of JVs together, they started pouring these investments and accordingly they sorted the two core challenges, which is overcoming the investments challenges because for any business at the end of the day, there is certain ROIs that they need to achieve, EBITDA margin, because at the end, no one is running business for charity. And from the other perspective, they want to meet the customer expectations when it comes to the coverage of the cellular coverage. So if we will take this use case and example, which is very successful, not only in our region, especially if you're talking about like in Saudi and in the UAE, it's very successful how the teleco evolved over the past 30 years. Now everyone is having cellular connectivity. No one is leaving their home without a mobile phone. It's a necessity, and there is no doubt we'll be having a coverage or no. Even nevertheless, are we going to have a 5G and how fast? What about if we apply the same public-private partnership into the ecosystem of the EV? And instead of building and pouring investment to build a teleco tower, we are building a station. Like Badr mentioned, one of the key elements, and Mr. Ulf mentioned, in the ecosystem is location and location and location. We require a location to provide the coverage. One point of time, it was to provide a cellular coverage, and we started having one teleco tower covering miles and kilometers, and then we started connecting and shortening the gap and having microcells. The same can happen with the EV charging infrastructure. We have one charger covers, let's say, like ROSHN front, and then the next one, it will be like a couple of kilometers away, and then start shortening the distance with having public-private partnership, let's say, between the energy companies and CPOs like EVIQ, ourselves, doing like tax incentives, all these things. So from one side, we are solving like a nationwide challenge. And the other thing, we're making it more profitable and more attractive for the private sectors and different CPOs to come and invest. They see healthy ROIs. There is no doubt it's a very long investment. So we believe that what applied and proved to be a successful business model in the telecom industry, it's the same can be applied into the EV ecosystem. In the sense, I'll give you a very good example. When the telecom industry started here in our region in the 90s, they started by providing a service called a voice call, which is the minutes. And then technology ramped up, introduced the data, and they started providing data packages and internet packages. And now we are evolving, and telecom operators can provide the third tier of service, which is an EV charging station or an EV charging service. So every time we're providing a service, one time we call it a phone call, the second one we call it a data and internet, the third can be an EV charging solution. That's why it's very crucial and important for the private-public partnerships. And we see it worked in the past, and it will work now, and it will work on the future.
Thank you. So before opening maybe the floor, one last question from my side. Best practices, what have you seen working in either previous market you have been working or current markets that you are working, or from experiences in establishing partnership? If we go again.
Sure. So we as a company, we focus a lot on the consumer experience. We deploy infrastructure depending on what users are telling us they need, and also depending on where the market is, where we as a global energy company can play a value add in. So I give examples, right? In the whole Asia, Middle East region, we deploy all sorts of combination of chargers. In China, for example, we are only deploying DC chargers in a hub concept, 20 to 30 DC charging in one location. In Singapore, which is where I'm from, we only deploy AC charging. This is end of day, near to your home charging. So the range of solutions is diverse. And for us, the most important thing is deploying the infrastructure to meet the use of the drivers. And bearing in mind that the use of the drivers is constantly evolving, then it's also having a deep appreciation of what they need.
Thank you. Mr. Ulf.
I think what we did in terms of applying best practice, a good example is our R&D facility that we have opened rather early in the history of the company. We have a set of different types of chargers indoors, but also outdoors. We have also built canopy types, so more or less testing what we will roll out in the future. Because if you don't do the things, you don't experience where things go wrong or what is actually good. And we offer this facility also to our partner companies. One of the partners is actually this week in our facility training installation companies getting certified on the product. So we open this up to the ecosystem because we want to enable that. And we also get first-hand experience, and our staff, who will then also participate in these trainings, will also get first-hand experience. So it's all about also learning, experiencing with hardware, but also with the software. So we are then, of course, connecting the chargers to our platform. We can test firmware updates. We can test usability. We will introduce tariffs at a certain point in time, so we also need to test how that works, going from free vending mode to introducing tariffs. Is the billing going right? So there's a lot of things that you need to test before you actually want to roll it out, whether it's hardware or it's software, because the product shouldn't arrive at the user. It should be ready and easy to use. So for me, this R&D facility, and especially that also our partners can make use of it. And we had also Saudi electricity company coming to the facility who has a 25% share in EVIQ. They also want to use it as a training facility for SEC staff. So I think it's a good showcase how you can more or less open this and offer this to the partner ecosystem to really get hands-on experience before actually deploying.
To jointly explore how to make it happening in real life.
And of course, we have our OEM partners coming with the cars to the chargers, and we all know with new models, or even if they do software updates, sometimes things don't work anymore. And this is what we can test, and we see a lot of benefits also for the partners when opening this up.
Thank you. Yeah. Badr.
So basically, in the best practices, we should look always into first the consumer itself, the consumer himself. The consumer himself, they need to have awareness campaigns, like similar to what Ulf was mentioning in the previous point, which is you're not supposed to charge it full. You're supposed to charge it for a specific. So if the people know and have the awareness and knows that it is convenient to them that if you charged this capacity, it will take you to that point without any inconvenience, then the people will start adapt more with the technology and will learn more into the technology. I still remember at the days when first the smart mobility started introduced in the market with the electrical scooters. There was zero safety measures, and that still today it is improving, but one of the companies came with a smart solution, like if you're in a geometric solution, where if you are in driving with the scooter in a specific zone, which is a kids playing zone, your speed does not go above than 5 kilometers. If you're driving, you did not unlock the helmet from the sensor, the scooter does not start. So these practices came from experiences and practices on the market. So that completes the picture for the what we do.
So if I can, and maybe just elaborating, I guess it is about use technology, is embrace further technology to help us in getting to the next type of mobility, which is EV mobility. But I would assume that there is also, let's use a lot more technology to help reducing some of the anxieties, because we know we need to charge only for the purpose, but we know that complexity starts to happen when, and I face it on a regular basis, going from A to B, either in Riyadh or in Dubai. It really depends on the time of the day it will happen, right? It can take you 10 minutes, it can take you 40 minutes. And that's unfortunately traffic conditions. So we need to have tools that help us in predicting and sizing our efforts based on the conditions that are around us.
Yes, and I still remember when the electrical vehicle started to be introduced in the market and they started to be more popular in the market, there was only you can charge them in a specific locations or either your house, okay? If you're going to drive from a city to another, you will be having a risk of no charging. The market has mitigated that today with mobile. Some of the companies has deployed recently a mobile charging station where it comes and charges your car and just take the charge and go. So the market today is adapting whatever is upcoming as challenge and coming beyond it, which tells that it's a mature, good enough market to invest on.
Thank you. Dr. Rami?
I couldn't agree with one of the points that Ulf mentioned, that driving an EV by itself, it's a different experience. That's 100% true. If we will take the ICE vehicles as an example, name whatever brand, from budget vehicles to luxurious ones, you just go to the petrol tank, plug in the gun, and then you start like filling up the tank. There is no tech behind it. However, it's not the case when we are talking about like an electric vehicle, and that's why, like Ulf mentioned about like R&D facilities and on all of these things, there is a science, there is a technology behind it. For example, understanding the charging patterns, how the speed of charging, and this would take us to a very interesting point, that usually the ICE drivers, they go to the petrol station, and the normal mindset, they top up the tank from 20 to 100% at one shot. However, when it comes to an EV, the real question is that, do we need to go out to an EV to swap with the same mindset that I need to get a full charge from 0 to 80 or 0 to 100 at one shot, or we can do it on top-up intervals? A very interesting use case that I was working on, do we park and charge, or do we charge and park? There is a big difference. If we park and charge, that means that I'm coming to the conference today, I'm driving an EV, I found a charger, so I plugged in, because anyways I'm parking, and I topped up from 20 to 50%, versus the traditional case, which is very challenging, that I park to charge, which is that my battery is draining out, I'm 20%, so I am forced to go to a charger and spend, let's say, 1 hour to charge. So if we started changing the user's mindset, okay, for the top-up, I'm coming to the conference, I topped up from 20 to 50, after it I'm having lunch or dinner, I found another charger, which would happen once there is enough infrastructure, like from real estate perspective, EVIQ as a CPO, then all these things. And how the chargers work, I've been into one of the R&D facility of an OEM, that the charger itself understand the temperature of the battery, and would it go exponentially from, for example, 20 to 50, or it would go linear. And of course, we see it like in all our smartphones. You charge your battery from 20% to 80, maybe in 30 minutes, and then from 80 to 100, it requires another 30 minutes. And if this would tell us something, it will tell us that the ecosystem of the EV and the charging infrastructure, it's more tech-based. It's not just like an idle dumb like gun where you just plug it into the car, doesn't differentiate whether it's a budget vehicle or super luxurious. All you just need to add petrol and then you will drive. It's a totally different ecosystem. So I couldn't agree more with the point that you highlighted. It's an experience by itself. Definitely, it's an experience. And once we understand this ecosystem, it opens the horizons for a lot of investors to come and invest into what we call it supplementary and complementary investments. This would open the investment opportunities for like data analytics and insights, which is, we call it like the new goal, the new oil. The other thing, some investments related to the solar energy, renewable energy, battery storage system. It would take us to a different horizon, like a circular economy, where, and we have seen it in the Middle East, in like Saudi and the UAE, a lot of investors coming up with a new ideas, with a new business opportunities that all started by just evolving to the EV. So the EV by itself, it's bringing a lot of an added value to everyone's extent.
Thank you. With 9 minutes left, I would like to open it for questions, if there are any.
Good afternoon. Here is Mohammed Faiz from Schneider Electric, Saudi Arabia. I'm just want to asking about the payment regulation that can be done. We last 2 months we heard about what happened in Europe. Maybe we can have something like this in Middle East. Regulation like this, it will help for the charging infrastructure to facilitate the payment and these situations.
Yeah, if I can, just to clarify, you would like to see a specific measure, and then we'll
regulation. I spoke about the regulation, whatever the kind of regulation, it can be applied of something or something like this, like
so
what happened in Europe.
Any new regulation that would be suggested? Just trying to frame the question.
I think where you're heading at. I mean, we had the AFIR regulation in Europe, where it's now compulsory to have a credit card reader at the charging station, more or less, and then you need to retrofit chargers, and all the new chargers, I think above 50 kilowatt needs to have, yes, let's say, this terminal. From my point of view, I would like to have as less regulation as possible as a CPO, because I want to serve my customer, and I will give you the best payment option the customer wants. I don't want to be forced to put in a technical device. We know what our customers like, so why do you tell me you need to do this? I think for me, of course, I know the reason behind it, to make it simple and uniform, but I would leave this, at least in this region here, in this very early phase, I would actually leave that to the market to find the best solutions. Because also behavior here is different to what we, of course, see in Europe, where it's more or less an RFID card market for all the MSPs that you hand out physical RFID cards. Let's say we are not planning to do this here. Yeah. So it's a different market. So regulation can be helpful, but determining a certain technology, I would definitely advise against that.
So market-driven choice, consumer convenience oriented. Any additional points?
From my side.
I hope that.
Thank you. It's enough for
addresses.
me. The point it was how to facilitate to the final consumer. Thank you.
Indeed, we heard throughout the panel that the convenience of the usage should be the mantra for all of us. We need to ensure that we help customers to understand how to transition in a new way of driving, in a new way of charging, in a new way of experiences, how we move around cities, countries altogether. Please.
Hello, my name is Bjørn Utgaard. I'm from Norway. Been in the EV charging industry for the last 10 years. One thing I've seen some places, unfortunately too many places, is that there are incumbents that are state incumbents that are trying to block private investment from coming into so blocking private investment in charging. So for example, in a country that I've worked a lot in, Costa Rica, only the utilities are allowed to invest. We know that in Dubai, for example, it's only the WIDA that is allowed to invest. I wonder how you see it from your perspectives in the region around the license to operate and the license to invest from the private sector, and whether you see incumbents, state incumbents, sort of blocking private investment in charging. My experience is we need anybody that sees a need for charging locally to have the incentive and the open access to invest in and commercialize charging. Thank you.
Anyone that want to start?
I can take that. So I think earlier the panel, His Excellency also said that they are more than open to private sector investments. Having said that, we also see that in every market there are market failures. There will be certain stations which will be less profitable, and it will be more of the role of government entities to play that gap in being the backbone for EV charging of a country. Right, so short answer to your question is, I know as a private sector player, we, as you said, more than welcome government-owned entities to come in, and our role as private sector is to come in to fill the gaps that are not already felt.
Yeah. Anyone else that wants to add on top of it?
From my personal view, every charge point is a good charge point. So I would definitely encourage private investment, also other CPOs coming to the market. And we as EVIQ, we don't want to build a monopoly. We will be one player in the market. We will have one segment where there will also be other players in this segment. And of course, then we have fleet electrification, charging at home, charging at work. So we need everybody, and we want to encourage actually everybody to come to the market to provide the services for the customers. And then it's also about roaming. That's also a topic we want to discuss tomorrow. How do you actually travel from UAE to Saudi seamlessly with one app or whatever it will be? So that's also something we're working on. So definitely cooperation is key, and island networks will not help no one, and also the customer will not accept that.
Maybe I add to that. So use example of China. China started, and they're one of the leading in our region. China started with State Grid of China coming in as a government entity to fill the gap of the highways. And now, as a private sector player, we are coming in to complement that. Right? So once again, we see the two coming in hand in hand.
Thank you. Any final questions? I think with the very quick one, because we have 1 minute, 50 seconds.
Yes, real quick. Thank you for your time, gentlemen. My name is Ashwin. I just had a quick question. As we are setting up this massive infrastructure around public and private charging points, how, as from a CPO perspective, from a real estate developer perspective, the use of renewable energy as an input to those chargers, how are we taking that into account? Do you actively look or plan for the future, or do you prefer renewable sources? Because we know there can be a cost and timing perspective. So just your perspective on that, please. Thank you.
So I'll start. We are an integrated energy player. TotalEnergies, I think last year we were one of the largest renewable developers globally. And we see this as us investing along the value chain. So short answer is that as a developer, both in the renewable space as well as a developer in the EV charging space, we're doing all we can within our means to contribute to this decarbonization journey.
Good to go, and we are running out of time as well.
The greener, the better, of course, the energy, and Saudi has ambitious targets to boost renewable energy until 2030. Yeah, it's definitely needed.
Yep, and we heard that there is certainly an ecosystem to be unlocked in terms of installing solar panels at location. Obviously, there needs to be discussions with the local utility that needs to be able to manage the intermittent amounts of energy that are injected into the grids. Seems easier said than done, so it requires obviously a well-coordinated effort among all the parties. Again, we said convenience of usage, but we said collaborations, and collaboration is among real estate developers, charging infrastructure. It is with the utilities that necessarily needs to vehicle the electricity and beyond. It's a full ecosystem. OEMs, we need to make sure that the charging works and the experimentation is required. We need to make it working in a very specific environment, which is GCC. GCC specs needs to be up to the harsh climate that we might face at certain times. So thank you very much for your time, for your insights. Thank you very much to the audience for listening, and I wish you a great continuation of the day. Thank you very much.